Going on to talk about police contact and firstly around investigating crime. The Safer West Mercia Plan, a very central commitment around ensuring that the public receive the quality service that they expect and deserve from West Mercia Police, whilst ensuring victims and survivors are put first. I absolutely am committed to ensuring that the force do deliver an effective first-class response by understanding those victims' needs, adapting behaviour to meet those needs, and ensuring that we then give them the right support, on top of ensuring, of course, outcomes which again are non-negotiable. We have seen, again, as to some of the other items we've discussed, we sometimes might focus on when it hasn't gone well, but we also see a huge number of compliments and indeed gratitude to the police for the service that they receive, including the amazing acts of compassion, dedication, commitment and tenacity that officers and staff show in supporting and getting justice for our victims. But part of the journey sometimes is understanding and improving where things go wrong, and I perhaps want to just understand how we bank some of the great service and carry on with that improvement. Some of the responses that we've had back in preparation for today feel they would use the phraseology about being let down in their mind, as in some of the things they would expect to happen perhaps haven't happened. Now, there are only two policing experts in this four-person conversation, and that's yourself and the deputy. And I'm interested in how your strategy for engaging and working with victims, that might only be their one victim and experience with the police in their life, to make sure that they feel and understand that they are getting the right service, get the outcome that they should expect.
I recognise it's incredibly important for the police service to service victims. You call us, you've been a victim of crime, you need a great level of service from us. That's why response rates are so important, so we get there quick, and we've seen from March this year a huge improvement in the speed of us attending incidents. So we used to get to non-emergency incidents within 2 hours about 60% of the time. Now it's about 80% of the time. That's down to the great work in our call centre and how they work with calls. And also we've seen improvements in detection rates. Now that might just be a statistic, but actually bringing someone to justice for a victim is incredibly important, particularly for all crime types. But we've seen over the last year improvements in burglary detection rates, and we know the impact that a burglary has on an individual, or even an offence like rape. Really serious, huge impact. Again, I'm really proud of the work that our officers in West Mercia have done around improving the amount of offences brought to justice for serious offences like rape. But as you highlight, Commissioner, for some that's just a statistic, and we need to be really compassionate in all our interactions with victims. And I'm pleased to say that in some of the key areas like burglary, for example, or violence, we are seeing improvements in victim satisfaction rates. The Chief, myself, the Chief Officer team, really keen on making sure we comply with the Victims Code, and the vast majority of crimes that we investigate have got a victim contact plan in them, and we have seen improvements in that area. But of course, we're never content with that. We think there are a number of things we can improve. We can improve detection rates, we can bring more offenders to justice, and we can improve victim satisfaction rates. And there's a number of initiatives that we've got going on as West Mercia to try and improve that. So we call it procedural justice, but how can we demonstrate to victims that we are well motivated and we're making an impact, being compassionate and working hard with them? Everybody receives training on that. Victims are brought into either through video accounts or in person to response teams to say, look, this is how I was treated, this is the impact on me, good or bad, so that people can really learn the lessons around that. And so it's at the heart of what we're trying to do, improving victim satisfaction, reducing crime and bringing offenders to justice on behalf of victims. I think, and I know the Chief's incredibly ambitious in this area, there's much more we can do, and over the next few years we'll be working hard in that space.
I absolutely recognise the progress in relation to outcomes and the actual outcomes. I also recognise the progress in relation to compliance of the Victims Code of Practice, the central tenet of that relationship with victims. And I hope you would recognise there is still more to go, which is what I hear from you both, and for me, interesting way and an important way that we can improve service and outcomes for action. I just want to focus slightly around the legitimacy element of doing that, because I started the conversation with saying there's two policing professionals in this conversation. That's on your side of the room, but I also know that the public, our consumers, the people whose legitimacy we need to police and spend their money, etc., don't always understand the intricacies of the professional policing element. And we don't always need to understand all of them, do we? But I think there are times where we perhaps need to understand a little more. And I just want to use two examples of the that we've had submitted for the session. One was around reports of shoplifting in Kidderminster, where there's some concern that either what they were told couldn't be recorded, or indeed was duplicating, or indeed didn't feel that their concerns being raised was being perhaps treated with legitimacy, and being treated with any kind of veracity, or indeed taken seriously. And the other one in relation to Hereford, where somebody reported some drug dealing in the town, and then some potential ASB harassment. They reported it through the emergency system, and then in their mind, they didn't say anything happened. But actually, when they called back later, they were told that plainclothes officers had attended. Now, I as Commissioner read that and think that's great. You know, police officers attended, sorted out, did the professional policing bit, whatever that was, and responded, but the victim or the person calling for service didn't know. How do you manage that in your very complex, busy system? Doing what needs to happen, but also ensuring those whose confidence, intel, legitimacy that we rely on also know enough about what is being done in either response to their concern or something that's been made.
Thanks. So if I take your points in order, the first one was about shoplifting, and shoplifting is a concern for us. So whilst overall crime is down and overall detection rates are up, shoplifting is also up, and I think some police forces in the country don't pay enough attention to this. We're drawing up plans for an extra effort and push into shoplifting. A, because it's important for our local businesses, but B, because people who shoplift do plenty of other crimes as well, and it's important that we solve those crimes and we bring those offenders to justice. So it's certainly not something we're ignoring, and we understand the impact that it has on businesses, particularly if those shoplifters become violent. So we're really keen to push into that space. In relation to the ASB you talk about, I mean, I think our investment with the precept uplift that came in last year in neighbourhood crime fighting teams is really key here, where you see what you might call signal crimes, but significant crimes that affect a whole community, whether that's antisocial behaviour, crack house, drug dealing, things like that citizen pointed out. These are ones where a dedicated neighbourhood crime fighting team can get out, respond, they're in uniform, and they deal with that issue. Now, I think the point you raised around, well, we actually went to that incident, but we didn't close the circle, did we? We didn't get back to the caller and say, by the way, I'm the officer who's been, you might not have seen me, but I was in plain clothes, this is what I've seen, this is what I've done. And that's something we can take away and always strive to improve on, because you know, the officers heard it, they've been dispatched, they've attended, they've dealt with it, but it somehow never got back to the caller, and I think that's a real shame, because we may have done the right thing, but the community in that case didn't feel it, and that's something we always need to work on.
Perhaps I could come in now with the experience of the victim of burglary in Herefordshire, who believed that the police did nothing to help solve the crime, and they were particularly concerned that there were no fingerprints taken, and as far as they knew, no follow-up inquiries. Now, that might have been their perception rather than reality, but we do get quite a lot of comments about fingerprints not being taken, and I just wondered what your views are on that as an issue.
Well, thanks for raising that, and if you're free to give us the details of the person who called in, we'll go and understand and let them know exactly what had taken place. I mean, it's worth saying for the force, but also for Herefordshire, burglary is down and detection rates are up, and also we've seen an increase in victim satisfaction for burglary, so we're going in the right direction there. As far as forensics is concerned, we've got an initiative at the moment where we're testing extra forensic provision for burglaries in Herefordshire at the moment to see if we can make a greater impact. Clearly, with the amount of crime scene investigators we've got, they can't go to all offences. And getting fingerprints from burglaries is sometimes a good line of inquiry, but you can't always get fingerprints. People wear gloves, as you know. We are very successful with getting bloods when people cut themselves on windows and things like that. But forensics is an important detection tool for us for burglaries. We're very keen to target harden, so where burglaries take place, you've commissioned designing out crime officers who can go and give smart water to those areas. We cocoon areas where there's been a lot of burglaries, so that we visit the neighbours and the neighbours' neighbours to try and maximise the opportunity for crime prevention. And as you've seen, we've got good neighbourhood watch coverage in West Mercia, and we know neighbourhood watch coverage works because people keep a lookout for each other, and that's really important because then they can ring 999 or 101. And one of the best ways we catch burglars is when they've escaped and they're just around the corner, whether that's our response officers, neighbourhood officers, some of our dog officers, they all have a part to play.
And you will get the same through your own contact with the public around, you referred to earlier about completing the circulars to police action. I very recently had an individual raised with me that they had their bike stolen in the city centre here, reported it, and very quickly closed down to say, there's no investigative opportunities here, and the case is closed, as it were. How do you, something stolen, broad daylight, middle of Worcester city centre, how do we continue to build the confidence in the public that things are proportionately responded to, because there might be lots of other things that would mean that we can't give everything, every bell and whistle available, but also that there is a proportionate response to all the things, and they feel that they've had a proportionate service.
Yes, it's really important that we do that, and our call handlers are trained to ask the investigative questions like, is there any CCTV? Are there witnesses there? And they can do a quick look to see what is there. But it's also important that for investigators, we investigate the crimes that are most solvable. And so if we gave every single crime to every investigator, and we've got 411 investigators, for example, in West Mercia, they would be having workloads of hundreds and hundreds of crimes and wouldn't be able to solve everything. So we do have to do that analysis to say, does this stand a legitimate chance of being solved or not? And when it doesn't, we should explain to the member of the public who's lost their bike in this incident that this is why we can't do anything else. However, if we come across the bike or if we come across CCTV, we're really keen to detect it, so we'd open it. So I would be interested in how we can always improve what we can tell to members of the public to assure them that we haven't just filed a crime, but that we have looked for investigative lines of inquiry.
I think really important with that as well is it's critical that the public report crime to us, because even if we aren't able to solve their individual crime, it informs our intelligence picture. And so you described an individual bike theft in Worcester, but if we know that we're getting 20 bike thefts from a specific part of Worcester, not only can we do the enforcement activity to catch the offenders, but also that really important prevention work with, in the location, target hardening and making it more difficult for people to attempt to steal push bikes from that location.
Bicycle theft is unfortunately in lots of our city centres and urban centres, isn't it? And Worcester sees a spike every year, and indeed there is a spike, as I've sought some reassurance from the force, and there is a force response to it, that wider system. And it was just, I'm interested in how we let the public know, because I absolutely know that not every crime will be detected, but the person who might have committed that crime might be held accountable, but not necessarily for that individual's crime. And that's the other element of how we reassure public over the outcomes they receive. I want to move on, but very, very briefly, in terms of the current methods of how we tell people we're not, or we're closing their case, as it were, do you think there are room for improvement as to how we do the equivalent of using that example of the bicycle, when they get an email or a letter to say there's no further actions at work? Do you think it's as good as it can be at the moment, or is there room for improvement there?
No, I think there will be room for improvement. There always is. How you deliver the message is incredibly important. Do you appear dismissive, or do you demonstrate that you've done everything that we possibly can? And I think we've got incredible staff who work in our call centres, and we've got investigators in our call centres. We deal with quite a lot of crime in our call centres, and they do a great job, and it's really difficult. And of course, there are ways we can improve that, and we should be one monitoring it, we're inspected on it, our staff listen to calls, our line managers in the call centre, they listen to calls and say, oh, did you see the way you spoke to this person was really good, or do you see how you could have improved it there? So I'm confident there is space for improvement, but I'm also confident